It's a beautiful Tuesday morning, and we say welcome to yet another edition of the Star Good Morning Show, our breakfast magazine program that brings you news, interviews, and updates on happenings across Sierra Leone. I am Leonora Jawara, and today's inspirational word says much of the difference you make tomorrow will start with what you do today. Coming up in the program, a team of geologists from the Sierra Leone Institution of Geoscientists has on Saturday, 3rd August, visited the site of Motome at Regent, where there is a reported incident of crack similar to the mudslide in 2017. The Petroleum Directorate, under the Office of the President, has held a consultative workshop on the draft report on environmental, social and health impact assessment relating to a proposed two-dimensional long offset seismic survey in the offshore waters of Sierra Leone in Pujon, Tombo, Matrojong and Potiloko, respectively. These stories and more health tips, weather update, and the currency exchange rates will be coming up shortly in the program. With me in the studio is the president of the Sierra Leone Institution of Geoscientists, Salim Sila. He will be talking to me on the initial findings from the reported crack of the Mount Sugarloaf at Motome. Good morning, Sila. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, Leonora. Good morning,
All right,
everyone.
nice to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I'll be back with you shortly. But first, remember, the Star Good Morning Show is sponsored by Rokel Commercial Bank. So let's take a message from our sponsors.
SimCorp allow old and young to make deposit and withdraw cash from their account at any time and anywhere. With Rokel Commercial Bank SimCorp, you can send and receive money at any place and any time. Rokel Commercial Bank don't make life better for we all.
Okay, and now let's begin the program with a first news item. A team of geologists from the Sierra Leone Institution of Geoscientists has on Saturday, 3rd August, visited the site at Motome at Regent, where there is a reported incident of crack similar to the mudslide in 2017. Let's have more in this report.
It's almost 2 years since the infamous landslide and flooding that claimed the lives of dozens of Sierra Leoneans. Residents on that fateful day woke up to a disastrous landslide, killing and destroying properties worth millions of leones. Nearly 2 years since the devastating landslide, several cracks have been detected along the Motome Valley, raising concerns among inhabitants and local geologists. Salim Sila is the president.
We came as Sierra Leone Institution of Geoscientists, a combination of all the geoscience discipline, to do our field visits. But when we came today, coincidentally, there is a landslide that occurred. Some people might see it's a small landslide, but people tend to forget that during the 2017, before the major landslide occurred, there was a smaller one about us. It may seem unconnected. That's how geological things took place. Because when you see the smaller one, meaning there could be a bigger one. So all we need to do is to study and identify what triggers the small one, and then we'll be able to predict whether a bigger one will happen and possibly about when it can happen.
What is happening here is a potential threat, not only to the environment, but human existence as well. This is an imminent disaster, according to Bunting Williams.
Situation in which these smaller landslides are a precursor to maybe a big disaster that is likely to occur. We are going to make sure we put our observations into a report, and we have representatives among our team from NMA. And before coming to the field, I sent an email to a guy who is a geotechnical engineer who is a specialist in handling these things. So we'll be engaging a pool of specialists in this field to see how we can make use of this information. But particularly, I think we should also work with other stakeholders, particularly also monitoring the amount of rainfall within this vicinity and observing with the local people as well, where such observations are So eventually, we'll be able to make recommendations to the localities for early warnings to people whose lives may be at risk.
Since the last disaster, communities were told to move out of the area. But up till now, people continue to reside in these communities. The looming danger hanging over this community seems to be treated with levity, as explained by the head woman of Regent Village.
Well, the problem is that these people, some of them do have land plans, they have documents for their land. And the fact that they have documents, that shows that they have authority to be in the place, although the place is not safe. But I can't convince them that this place is not safe. Only the government can do so, especially the Minister of Lands and other MDs. My advice is for the government to come on board and evacuate these people because we still have guards.
The situation here is terrible and very much scary. But with recommendation of this type, there is every need for government action.
Some houses are there which are very risky for people to dwell in those houses because there are so many other rocks hanging around which can cause damage overnight. So it's very hard to tell them to move out, but the government can come in and intervene and come and negotiate with these people and see how best they can move them out and do a better thing that can prevent these activities to reoccur.
Thank you very much. Over the years, communities, including encroachers, continue cutting down trees without replacing them. This is one key message as Sierra Leone continue to experience heavy downpour of rains year in, year out.
Let us make tree planting a program in which the citizens own it, instead of it being left in the hands of government officials. Such that if you have a home, plant a tree. If you plant a tree today, you are saving your environment down the line. If we make that one a possibility, then we can save our environment, or we can reduce the risks that we are seeing happening here today.
The recent landslide past Friday night washed away a house and a makeshift structure that was under construction. The visit by Sierra Leonean geologists to this area calls for more action and support. Reporting for Star Television News, this is Mohammed Kone.
Many thanks to Mohammed Kone for putting that report together. 12 minutes gone past 9 is the time from our studio clock. And remember, this is the Star Good Morning Show. Well, to discuss more on that issue is Salim Silla, like I earlier introduced him to you. And I've also been joined in the studio by Bontin Williams from the Sierra Leone Institution of Geosciences. Good morning, Bontin. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you.
Okay, let me start with you, Salim. First, tell us a little bit about the Sierra Leone Institution of Geosciences.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning once more. The Sierra Leone Institution of Geoscientists is a composition of various disciplines in geosciences, including geology, mineralogy, geophysics, environmental science, mining. We have over 15 disciplines in the geoscientists. So we were operating, differently, not aligned to our practice and how we can benefit members as well as students and graduates without jobs. So we saw it fit over a decade ago that we need to come together and form this institution so we can regulate ourselves, how we operate. Because remember, we're talking of the geosciences, and this country rely heavily on mineral, export before now. So we believe our importance in the country is very important, and we also need to make ourselves valuable as scientists and professionals. So we formed this group. We are registered. We have a membership of over 150 registered paying members and a different cadre. So we've been also involved in several activities, not only mining, because when you talk of geoscience, people just say, they are miners and geologists going to the bush, breaking rocks and stuff. So we do a lot of things, which include, the video you just shown, and we contribute in different aspects of life in this country.
Okay, let me ask you one thing. How relevant is this institution for Sierra Leone?
As good morning, viewers. As Salim has mentioned, we feel that we need a platform on which various disciplines under the geoscience practice can meet. And so it's a platform for networking. It's a platform through which geoscientists can make themselves relevant in terms of current trends in their various fields. Of course, Salim forgot to mention hydrology. These days, water is an issue in the world, how to manage water resources. So all of these people are part of our membership. We have members from students. If you are a second year student in any of the geosciences, you are eligible to become a member. We have quite a good number of them, and when you graduate, and many of us are aware of the fact that in many instances there are no opportunities, or the opportunities are very few and far between for professional development. So there is a sense in which SLIG is also a platform where our members can stay current, network with other professionals in their sector and other sectors. And we're also looking forward to having the companies being part of our institution. At the moment, we have two private companies that are registered members of SLIG. So that's the kind of framework we are building, training of professionals after they graduate, because there is usually that link. I also lecture at the university, Fobi College. I lecture environmental geology. There is that link. There is that missing link between graduation and what the industry requires. So we also are looking forward to having professional training programs that can ensure that our young graduates are up to what the industry would require them to be when they are ready to be recruited.
All right, thank you. Now, Salim, last Friday, unfortunate incident happened, though it is a natural disaster. And we see your institution made a visit at Motome. Well, what prompted that visit?
Yeah, actually our visit to Motome was based on some social media photographs, interpretations, well, mostly wrong interpretations on a crack, they call it, and that was developing in Motome area. So we as geoscientists, we do not want people to misinform the general population of what was happening, because that directly falls under our purview of our profession. So we thought it's very important for us to help the nation to understand exactly what was happening there. So our mission on that day was to basically assess the crack, determine what causes the crack, because we have different factors that could lead to cracks in soil. It happens all over the world.
Okay, sorry to cut you before you talk about your assessments and what causes the crack. Let's viewers, myself included, let's understand what causes crack in the land.
Okay, crack forms due to different reasons. One of them, and most people will not know, is groundwater movement. And when groundwater moves, especially so in mountainous areas like the Motome area, the Regent areas, and it could even happen in flats, people normally see perennial springs, like water that normally comes in the rainy season most of the time, and they form a spring, but in the rainy season you see them flowing on the hills, but in the dry season you don't see them. So they are coming from somewhere. But normally what happens is those water have underground channels through which they move. Because of the geology of our country, I would not want to bother people with the technicality of it, but because of the geology of our country, of this city, is seated on a gabbroic complex. So a gabbroic complex is a sort of rock that has different ways it weathers compared to the granite, say in Kabbalah or Makeni. It's susceptible to what we call differential weathering. That means some part of it weather rapidly than some other part of it. So because of that, groundwater takes advantage of the weaker areas. It keeps washing them, you wash them to a point that the cohesion, what is holding the rock cannot hold. So the rock, what we call slumping, takes place. It like slump, it collapses. So that will happen. That's one reason. The second reason is stress. If the land is subjected to stress, depending on which direction the stress comes from, like if you talk of the Montome area, because it's what we call active zone. So meaning there are different forces that are acting there. So the land is having so much pressure, which is stress coming from all directions. So the only way the land can react to it is like breaking to release some of the stress. So that's two. The third one, and most importantly, which we geologists are very much concerned about, is what we call faulting. Faulting is a breakage in the earth. It could be in rock, it could be in soil, but it's an opening that could be probably 100 or 50 meters deep, but it has a lot of influence because it can trigger landslide, it can trigger earthquake, it can also deform the land that people normally see. And faulting is also very dangerous because when it moves, rock tends to move against each other. When these are very hard objects, so when they rub against each other, they also tend to generate energy. So those energy is what people feel, and some geologists even believe the landslide that happened in 2017 could have been as a result of faulting. But we didn't have time to do a lot of studies, but that is another school of thought.
Okay, we should come to that. Bontin, you were also part of the team. What's your assessment at the land at Montome?
In addition to what Salim has mentioned, when we talk about landslides, you look at hilly terrains where they are prone to happening, and another important factor is a trigger by rainfall. So you are looking at an interplay of several things. In addition to what he has mentioned, you are looking at the topography, you are looking at the rainfall, amount of rainfall. One of the objectives of our study is to look at what links could there be between this landslide that has occurred and that one that occurred in 2017. And in 2017, August, we also are aware of the fact that there were 3 other landslides that occurred contemporaneously with the one that caused the disaster. And so, having mentioned this, we should also note that landslides are under what we consider in environmental geology as natural hazards. So they could occur with or without the action of human beings, anthropogenic factors. We also got, it was also brought to our attention a landslide that occurred at York. Okay, from our understanding, the scale of that landslide is also quite huge. But the fact of, that of relevance is the fact that when the Montome incident happened, it happened in an area that was populated. All right, and because of that population, we are all aware of the fact that about 1,000 people lost their lives. So, where this landslide occurred, it is important that we understand them, we study them, because we are also aware of the fact that landslides are linked. Geohazards are linked. Okay, like I mentioned, in 2017, 4 landslides occurred around the same time, but one was the one that caused.
So many people get confused between landslide and mudslide. What is the difference?
It's just an interchange of terms, of words. Actually, landslide is the generic term, okay, that applies to other forms of mass movement, of which mudslide. So essentially, when you're looking at the specifics, you're looking at the type of material that has moved, the speed with which it's moved. So there are various categories under which a nomenclature can be applied, but the generic term should be landslide, and then you can have mudslide when you have only mud that moved. So that's why in the academic environment, it is better to use the term landslide, because it was not only mud movement. Of course, all of us saw what happened at Montome. We had huge boulders that were in the system that moved down, and so the more generic, but of course, after the landslide occurred, because of the intense rainfall, okay, particles became fluid and moved right down the creek about 6 kilometers to Juba. So with that landslide was associated mudslide and flooding.
All right.
Yeah, but like I mentioned, our objective is to look at what links could there be between this landslide that occurred at Medina and the one that occurred in 2017, and map the relationships between these. We are currently working with our partners, British Geological Surveys, of which we have some of our members and the members of the British Geological Surveys, and National Minerals Agency. And so we are putting plans together to analyze rainfall data, look at the geology on the ground, and see what conclusions we can arrive at that, and also see what recommendations we can make for the surrounding areas to ensure that people are moved out of harm's way.
Okay. Now, so like your visit to Motome, and we see another crack opening at the same site there. What are some of your observations and findings?
Yeah, and we were able to observe basically that the crack we saw might have some connection with the landslide, but definitely the landslide does not cause the cracks. So if anything, the cracks will have led to the landslide. So that's why it's even geologically interesting for us. Because that could be some form of movement. We will not say, because tomorrow we don't want to preempt what we might be doing presentation for ONS tomorrow, and we don't have time to say everything, but okay, so that's one observation. So we did notice that our displacement, what we call in geology displacement, for example, if my hands are like a single unit, if it comes to a point wherein you see this hand here and this one is here, so that's displacement. So the distance between this hand and this hand, that is the degree of displacement. So if things started moving like that, then you're having deformation. So if that happens, you expect it to have some counterproductive way of releasing that kind of stress. So we definitely see that the landslide did not cause the crack. So that's very important, because people are seeing cracks all over the place these days. So we will love as geologists to continue mapping those cracks and look at the topography, the geomorphology.
What is the extent of the cracks?
And well, that's very interesting, because when we started seeing the photo on the social media, it was more like a very small, tiny crack that normally surface runoff can cause, because we normally see when water does not have proper channel to flow, it kind of like creates its own channel to flow. So for place that is not like concrete, it definitely will move in different directions. So initially when we started seeing, it wasn't like interesting, but then following photos started showing like it's opening further, and the distance between the rock, we're talking of a competent rock, there is a particular distinctive rock on those photos that come out. It's a rock that was broken, shivered completely, it's displaced. So that makes it interesting, because it's a competent rock. Not even human being can like break that in 30-40 minutes. So you need a very strong natural force to break a rock like that. So when we started seeing the displacement is increasing and the crack is expanding, and also it's becoming more extensive, you're having other smaller cracks that are associated with the major cracks, then we said, okay, this is now becoming geologically interesting, so it needs our intervention. So that's when we went in. So, but I think people should be aware and be cautious not to be around those kind of places so much. But that will be part of our recommendations that we'll be putting to our stakeholders.
Bonte, you want to add something to that?
Essentially, we during our time out in the field, maybe stepping back a bit, we initially planned this field visit to go and look at these cracks. What is the relevance of the cracks for a landslide to happen, for failure? Materials on the slope are there, and the literature will tell us that materials on the hill slope, they will remain on that slope until they are disturbed. You have what you call the resisting forces and the driving forces. So there is a balance, more or less, on the hill slope. So for a landslide to happen on a hill slope, there has to be a slip plane, okay, along which movement will occur. So that's the sense in which it's important for us to map these cracks. So we went out there to look at these so-called cracks, because in 2017, when the landslide also happened, certain areas where people mentioned that there were cracks, when we went out there, they were actually not cracks, they were due to weathering of the rocks, okay, that we would refer to as exfoliation weathering. So we wanted to see what were these cracks that people have seen and map them to understand their nature. As I mentioned, if they are of such nature that they can lead to a failure on the hill slope, then it's important, looking at other factors, the rock types, and other activities that are ongoing on within that location, it's important that we will be able to draw conclusions. So we went to look at the cracks, but by the time we got to the field on Saturday morning, we also learned that that particular area failed on the night of Friday night. So you see the link that there may be with this thing. So that's what our work plan is aimed at, looking at further areas that could be prone to such conditions, because mind you, Freetown is made up of the same, more or less the same rock type. The Gabwek complex, Freetown is referred to as a Gabwek complex with the, similar lithology. So if that has been established, then we want to look at where these conditions are that resemble potential threats for people to be given recommendations to the people that have the authority, politicians and others, of course, to make the decision to take people out of harm's way.
All right, continue to stay with me, Bontin and Sila. I'll be back with you guys shortly. Now, it's 9:31 time. Now we join Sienna Wright for today's health tips.
Health and nutrition tips. Always remember to eat 3 meals a day. That's breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It is very important to remember that dinner does not have to be the largest meal, and don't skip breakfast. Studies show that eating a proper breakfast is one of the most positive things you can do if you're trying to lose weight, and breakfast skippers tend to gain weight. A balanced breakfast includes fresh fruits or fresh juice, a high-fiber breakfast cereal, low-fat milk or yogurt, whole wheat toast, and a boiled egg. Here are some foods that are super healthy and are incredibly healthy. Most of them are surprisingly delicious. Fruits and berries. Fruits and berries are among the world's most popular health foods. These sweet, nutritious foods are very easy to incorporate into your diet because they require little or no preparation. Apples. Apples are high in fiber, vitamin C, and nutritious antioxidants. They're very filling and make the perfect snack if you're finding yourself hungry between meals. Avocados. Avocados are different than most fruits because they're loaded with healthy fats instead of carbs. Not only are they creamy and tasty, but also high in fiber, potassium, and vitamin C. Bananas. Bananas are among the world's best source of potassium. They're also high in vitamin B6 and fiber, as well as covenant and portable. Oranges. Oranges are well known for their vitamin C content. What more? They're high in fiber and antioxidants. Strawberries. Strawberries are highly nutritious and low in both carbs and calories. They are loaded with vitamin C, fiber, and manganese, and are arguably among the most delicious foods in existence. Other health fruits and berries include cherries, grapes, grapefruit, kiwi fruit, lemons, mango, melons, olives, peaches, pears, pineapples, plums, and raspberries. Eggs. Eggs are among the most nutritious foods on the planet. They were previously demonized for being high in cholesterol, but new studies show that they're perfectly safe and healthy. Meat. Unprocessed, gently cooked meat is one of the most nutritious foods you can eat. Lean beef. Lean beef is among the best source of protein in existence and loaded with highly bioavailable iron. Choosing the fatty cuts is fine if you are on a low-carb diet. Chicken breast. Chicken breast is low in fat and calories, but extremely high in protein. It's a great source of many nutrients. Again, feel free to eat fattier cuts of chicken if you're not eating that many carbs. Lamb. Lambs are usually grass-fed, and their meat tends to be high in omega-3 fatty acids. And now to nuts and seeds. These foods are crunchy, filling, and loaded with important nutrients that many people don't get enough, including magnesium and vitamin E. Almonds. Almonds are popular nuts loaded with vitamin E, antioxidants, magnesium, and fiber. Coconuts. Coconuts are loaded with fiber and powerful fatty acids. Peanuts. There you have it. These are some of the healthiest food to eat according to research. Whether you want to overhaul your diet or simply change up your meals, it's easy to add a number of these foods to your routine. If you don't normally challenge your palate, don't be afraid of trying something new.
Many thanks, Sienna Wright, and remember to eat healthy. Health is wealth. Well, let me come back to my studio guest. Remember, this is the Star Good Morning Show. We're discussing the incidents at Motomé, the crack opening there. Now, I don't know which one to start with. Let me start with Sila. Now, we saw this crack opening at Motomé again. What will this lead to, not only for Motomé, but let's say the greater part of Freetown?
Yeah, well, we as scientists, we want to base our statements on fact and data, and that's actually what we have just started. We are going to do a lot of mapping around the peninsula. Well, actually that day we didn't complete the sort of investigation we would have loved to do, because we had a drone that would have given us some insight, because we weren't expecting landslide that day. Okay, so we will have actually been on that slope, that slide. So probably that will have also become a victim in the process, because we wanted to walk along the strike, or let me say along the lineation of the crack, follow it until where it ends into the surrounding residential areas, and then we can see what it impacted on the infrastructure, the people, the houses, and those kind of things. But unfortunately, the direction where the crack was leading, that was where the landslide was. So because of you have this huge volume of material that covered most of the parts of the crack, so we cannot follow it. But then also, unfortunately, it rained that day for the entire day, which was good for us as geologists, because we wanted to walk in the rain. If you want to really feel the effect of an activity, you have to be when the activity is happening. So the rain is definitely a trigger for most of these major incidents we are having. So we have to be in the rain to see it happening. So we appreciated the rain, but the intensity of the rain was so much that we could not fly our drone. So we were unable to do it, and it's also very dangerous for us to follow it. So we're coming up with different research proposals. In different ways we'll be able to investigate this crack without putting men and members at risk, because it's unsafe. Even that day we were there was still sliding. There is still movement occurring, which we call creep. And creep is a slower form of movement, but it also indicates that there is something after that. So basically, we know there is going to be another fall. When it will happen, we don't know, we cannot preempt. And yeah, so basically the crack is something very important, and we want to base our investigations, our statement that we're going to come up with based on those facts and scientific data we can present internationally, and people will appreciate, like, okay, yes, this we trust it. Because you don't just go to government, remove everybody. You need to like give facts. Why are you removing? Because the people also want to understand why you removing me here. I've been here since 19 whatever. So it's difficult to explain to them. So you need to really tell them fact. They need to see data. Hopefully they will understand the reason why we're making those recommendations.
Okay, quickly, Bunton, earlier you differentiate between mudslide and landslide. But what are the indicators of a landslide?
I mentioned that landslide is the broader term that you can use. It defines all types of mass movements on the slope, and depending on, as Salim mentioned, creep is a form of mass movement, but the time factor there is very slow. Materials are moving like in creeping, all right, whereas you would have landslides like the incident that happened at Motomé, when people that witnessed the incident mentioned that within a flash, some people had a big sound or something like that. Materials just moved, and there is little or no time for you to get out of harm's way. If it's a creep, you'd actually see it happening and you'll be able to move out. So it's essential that these areas are mapped. And maybe a question might come to mind, why is it now that these places are being mapped? We actually went out into the field in 2017, as I mentioned, and we submitted some preliminary sketches of thoughts that we thought was at play that caused the August 14 incident. And at that time, we were expecting that further collaboration would happen for us to be involved in mapping these areas, because as you were talking about, moving people, Freetown is more or less made up of these hill slopes, our nice terrain, properly drained, the hillside giving a very beautiful feature. So these hillsides are also part of what nature has given us to beautify the country, but at the same time, studies should be done. You can't go moving people away. I mean, we have all similar hill slopes, similar slope angles. So movement of people should be based on studies. As I mentioned, we are working with other partners in the NMA and the British Geological Surveys. And I am aware from conversation with a few colleagues, of course we have members that are in the NMA as well, that they also had the intention, to have done all of these studies, but I mean, I think there was a sense in which they were limited by maybe the available resources. But what SLIG has decided to do at this stage is to go on the ground and working with some of our colleagues that are in UK, in the British Geological Surveys and in other locations, to do our own studies, even though as much as it may not require too much sophisticated equipment, which we are not in the position to have at the moment, but we can look at rainfall data, analyze them, understanding hazards essentially. One of the key things with all the sophistication is brain power. All right, so there's always a sense in which you need to have people on the ground who understand the features to look for, record them, and then you can use, that can be put side by side with satellite imagery and rainfall data and the geology of the area to arrive at conclusions, of course, with expert minds.
So in 2017, when the mudslide happened at Motomé, the landslide, okay, thank you for your correction, we saw governments bringing in experts to tell us what actually happened, to know what's the causes in the area, and you guys were in operation. So did you make yourself relevant to government to be able to give them advice rather than bringing in foreign people to know exactly what happened in our land?
As I mentioned, in 2017 we went out there about the second day of the incident and we did a sketch report, and at that time there was a command center established and we made ourselves visible. But along the line, when decisions were happening, nobody invited us or called upon us to make our views or our experience known. But it was also noted that some of our reports that were used was the basis on which there are one or two reports that are public documents. The report by the UNDP, the report by World Bank, they actually referenced the geology ground truthing that we had done, albeit not up to the standard that we would have wanted if we had got the support. So it was also a surprise to us that all of these activities that happened with UNOPS and, it would have been, because one of the benefits of natural hazards, of disasters, is that when they happen, they grant you the opportunity to study them and to be able to make decisions as to preventing other such disasters in similar terrain. Landslides that occurred in other parts of the world, for example, the Vajont dam disaster in Italy that occurred in 1963, some of these things are still being studied. You study them so that you'll be able to break up recommendations, understand how they happen, what are the causative factors, so that you advise. So that's the sense in which we are now moving on. And thankfully, like I mentioned, we wrote a letter to the Director General of NMA, and they has also considered it necessary that we proceed with further studies, ground truthing. As I mentioned, landslide occurred at York, of course, albeit there were no fatalities, but it is important. I understand that some studies were done there, but we want to be more actively involved with these things now rather than waiting for. So actually, it was after we went to the field that ONS have invited us to. They invited us to a meeting on Sunday, but I was not opportune to attend that meeting. But those that attended mentioned that that meeting, the focus of that meeting was more based on relief services to affected victims. Okay, that is also part of, you know, these disasters when they occur, all right? But also you have to look at what caused it so that you are in a better position to advise, to forewarn people, all right, rather than waiting for it to happen and then going out to give relief to people. And one life loss is too many. Sometimes by the time it has happened, there is loss of life, and that one can, no matter how much you give to people, you know, you can never recover that life lost. So that's a sense in which we want to go out there, do our own studies, whether or not ONS or UNOPS. Well, we are willing to, from stepping out into the field, we had the intention to share our reports and results to local and international partners, and even get publications done. So at this moment, that is the posture that we have taken. Yeah, to go ahead with this thing.
Priscilla, after the disaster in 2017, is there any lessons learned so that we can prevent further occurrence?
Well, I think probably lessons were learned. Maybe how to deal with people that are affected by disasters such as landslide, because if you remember in our recent history, we hadn't had such a high fatality caused by landslide. But landslide happens in the mining areas every time. That's man-induced landslide, because when people mine, they fail to take slope angles into consideration. So that happens in places like Konotongo several times, because the tailing dumps that were left by previous big mining companies is so high, like 30-40 meters high, so people go to mine there and there is a slide, and then you have a lot of people dying. So that's been happening several times. But for the nature-induced slide like this, and I don't think the government or the institutions that are supposed to be able to have lessons will have learned enough from it, because up to now people are still only focused on how to deal with the people that are affected, not how it happens, because I haven't seen any investment in research in those fields. But that's not like it's this government or the previous government, it's the African mentality thing, because we just think UN should come and invest in research on that. It's our country. Okay, it doesn't take so much. You have majority of the SLIG members or even the engineers, they went through SLG, government grants, and some of them that studied abroad also had government scholarships. So it's a matter of the government calling the meeting, guys, we know we are under-resourced financially, but what can you guys come up with that will be a cheap form for us to do a proper research on these things? And there are a whole lot of things that needs to be studied. And if we don't study them, actually I was in a meeting recently. I had the mayor of the Freetown City Council saying, and she really does not want to only focus on handing out to people relief and food and blanket. She wants to look at the bigger picture, the future. How do we tell when this is going to occur? And I admire that, because that's very statesmanly from her, and that's what we expect. For us to be able to, we should not think of when people die to go and remove them and have a grand burial for the world to feel sorry for us. That's not what we should look at. We should really look at how do we prevent the people. And for us to do that, we need to do research. The World Bank cannot do it. No matter how the World Bank geologist is sophisticated, can have all the whatever they have, they will never know the geology of Sierra Leone better than us. And I also want to let the institutions that are in handling this matter, they should know that the geologists are the pathologists when it comes to the art. If you bring the surgeon, everybody they bring there, we see them as surgeons. I was saying the other day, is that you have an outbreak of elephantiasis. You bring in a plane load of surgeons, they start amputating everybody with elephantiasis. And you leave the pathologists that will tell you what really causes elephantiasis. And we don't need to eradicate those mosquitoes with the filaria to stop elephantiasis. So you don't need to bring a plane load of surgeons. So that's all you need. So it's as simple as that. So all the government need is invest a little bit in research, get these professional institutions to make a study and compile a report for the government. UN, World Bank don't have to do it for us.
Okay.
We can do it.
So now, you want to say something?
To add to what Salim was saying, when we have issues of constitutional whatever, we bring in the lawyers. People are free to make their opinions. In fact, when such incidents occur, overnight everybody is transformed into a legal practitioner giving their views. But eventually, we have recourse to the legal experts to advise as to the way forward. Well, sometimes what they tell us leaves us more confused than where we started. But that's the sense in which looking at environmental issues, the geology of those areas, you're talking about land use planning, people living on floodplains. Proper, of course, I am aware that some studies were done by Intergems and other institutions. That's the sense in which those reports should be actually used to advise as to where people should live and not live. So, in essence, the decision to move or evacuate people should be advised by the science.
So now, Freetown has been hit by rain, and we don't know if more rains will be coming more tougher. And we've seen cracks at the motorway again. Is there a possibility for another landslide or mudslide, as you may call it?
Possibility, yes. When, we can't tell. But what we can do, as I have mentioned, is to actually go back and look at, we are in the process of getting the rainfall information from statistics. I witnessed a live program in which one of the senior directors of statistics was mentioning that the amount of rainfall that happened up to the week of 2nd August, it was more than the amount of rainfall that we received in July or something of that nature. That's a sense in which we should look at these rainfall patterns before and leading to this incident that occurred on 2nd August, and also compare that to those conditions in 2017, and also get information from the local people, because in every sense of this, they are living in these communities. They will be able to provide information as to what recent hazardous condition they have seen in their community. The cracks, we refer to them as tension gashes that open on the ground. And so when those things are observed, then we would come in and make an evaluation of it and be able to essentially use the knowledge to advise people.
What areas as of now?
Yes, definitely we'll be able to locate where all the prone areas are to landslide. We're already working on that, and we'll get there, and we just need some more resource because we are a little bit under resourced. But like we said, we are taking the bull by its horn, so we hope the government will also copy, like, okay, these are guys that are doing their own private stuff. They are able to put resources together to do studies without our support. So all we need to do is come.
And so how ready are you guys to work with the government? How ready are you?
We are 100% ready because if you see, like Bunty mentioned, we did that report in 2017. We made it available. Whilst these same World Bank people, they were bringing our UNOP and all these other professionals, they wanted to publish. We did not, we weren't greedy. We could have published it because a lot of people published after us, but they used our preliminary data. Okay, we did not look for fame. We did not look for recognition. We did it and we shared it openly, so everybody had it. We were referenced, yes, but we could have also become a publisher. So if we are doing that, we'll be open. And if I may add to like the last question you also asked Bunting about the disaster, we are still in denial in this country because we are still failing to recognize the change in weather patterns. Global warming is undeniable, and its effect on the weather is also undeniable. We're seeing that the rainfall pattern is changing. The intensity of rain is increasing here on here.
Are we prone to tsunami?
Yes, we are definitely, because like I saying, geologically speaking, we are, because tsunami definitely forms when you have activities on the sea that will generate so much energy that will push the waves up, tides up, and push a huge volume of water. Okay, we do not have volcanic activities, but we have areas in Africa that still have active underwater volcano. So previous calculations have shown that if, say for example, a volcanic activity becomes active in places like Cape Verde, it will be less than 3 hours, the tsunami will touch the shores of Sierra Leone. So by now we should be really thinking of sea level rise and all these things, which I believe EPA is working on, but definitely the global warming, weather patterns are changing, so government really needs to invest a lot on research for local people.
Montin, is there any advice for awareness?
We would be having a conversation with them, and as we have mentioned, the solutions to this problem has to involve different disciplines, and collaborating, bringing their inputs. The engineers have to look at the situation as to what we have reported and see what solutions they can also bring on the table, and people in the community leaders. So all of these stakeholders would have to sit and collaborate on the measures that should be taken. As Ali mentioned, the mayor is one person that has mentioned that it's not only looking at who to give blanket or to give a bag of rice, but to look at how do we understand these natural disasters, what human activity is contributing to them, because essentially, of course, there is a sense in which building houses in these locations affect the landscape, it affects the natural flow of the streams, and water would be diverted to where it should not be diverted, and all of these things are creating problems. So it behoves a holistic evaluation of it, and then based on that, I'm quite sure the political will should be to ensure that people are moved out of harm's way. As I mentioned, these natural disasters, even with climate change, they are on the increase. Human activities have accelerated the rate of change of the environment. But disasters would happen anyway. In the history of the earth, most of these terrains that we see are the result of erosion and landslide and earthquakes and volcanic eruptions and all this.
Okay, so quickly, what would be your advice to residents at Motombe Sila?
Okay, my advice will definitely be to the government, and I always mention that nobody will want to live where you used to have lived. So definitely the government are aware of the political consequences in taking certain decisions. But regardless of those consequences, the government should act to protect the general citizens. I think that should explain. Yes.
Thank you so very much. Is Salim Sila, President of the Sierra Leone Institution of Geosciences. Quickly, what will be your closing notes?
Yes, so in addition to what Mr. Sila has just mentioned, there is what we refer to as the precautionary principle, which essentially states that when you have a hazardous situation as this, you don't necessarily need scientific proof as to make a decision to move people out of harm's way, in as much as that is what we are going out to find. But we all know the incident that occurred at Motome in August 2017, and so it's in that background that there should be a decision to take people out of those zones. Well, without saying too much, it got to my mind that when we looked at the August 17 situation, those areas all fell within an area we refer to as paleo landslides. These are areas that landslides have occurred in the historic past. So if they are occurring again, that means some reactivation is taking place. So in as much as we are willing to look at these studies, but also there is a sense in which an action should be taken to move people out of those areas where landslides are being reactivated.
Thank you very much, Montin Williams from the Sierra Leone Institution of Geosciences. Remember to stay safe. Well, that's how we end the program for today. Don't forget to catch up with me tomorrow at 9 a.m. for another edition. Thank you so very much for watching. I am Leonora Jawara, leaving you with our inspirational quote for today, which says, much of the difference you make tomorrow will start with what you do today. Well, until then, thank you for watching. Leaving you with the foreign exchange rate and the weather forecast for today.